I can honestly say velvet and bouclé together, what a combination, what a challenge, and I've had to get creative. Bouclé, bulky in your sewing room or your stash, bulky under your machine, but worth sewing with. Hey everybody, this is past Sam, who's just leaping on to say I made this bouclé jacket and I've nearly finished this bouclé jacket, and today is all about how it was to make them, tips, ideas, and also a little bit of other Vlogmas content, and I'll take you along as I make them and some little tips about how I fit so much into my week. Hope you enjoy. Don't forget to leave me a comment. Tell me, do you like what I created? Do you have tips and suggestions? Do you have a go-to bouclé pattern? Because I would love to hear that. Before we cut to that, let's open an advent gift. What have we got? We've got, oh, I've dropped something on the floor. Find that in a minute. It's a very thin one. What have we got? We have, oh, some buttons. Gotta love some buttons. Oh, lovely. There you go. Put them in my hand. You can see them there. Go. Gotta love some buttons. They're great. They'll go straight in my button collection. Morning, 7:30 a.m. Bit of cosy sewing before the day starts. Of the So Liberated Sylvan jacket. I made a toile at the weekend and it worked, but I felt it needed to be more cropped. But what I've gone for is velvet for the collars. I felt the bouclé would be too stiff having made the toile, and I happen to have a velvet that in the light of yesterday evening worked. Whether it works in the daylight, I don't know. So, while I just clip this last sleeve in, let me tell you a little story. Somebody messaged me the other day on Instagram, absolutely fine by the way, I'm very happy that they did, and they said to me, because they'd put it up and I thought it was a joke, and they was like, serious question, how do you get so much done? Well, here I am at 7:45 in the morning, and I will have constructed the shoulders and joined the facings together and the sleeves. So these are all the like straightforward stitchy on bits that I will have done before I get dressed and go to work, which means that tonight when I sit down to sew, I will have the brain space and the ironing board and everything ready to do the fiddly bits, which is the collar. So, and it means that I've used my time effectively this morning. Yes, I could have sat and scrolled on my phone for another 20 minutes or done some dusting, which I won't be doing. I honestly, genuinely never dust. I use Gusto for my meals, so some weeks I don't even go to a supermarket at all, because I'll just do a big shop to have everything else in the house. So honestly, I'm in my dressing gown, I've literally sat down, washed out 20 minutes, just putting this last sleeve on, and I get dressed, go to work for the day, and after dinner tonight I can sit and do the fiddly bits. Something doesn't sound right. So I'm going to share some tips now. I have mostly finished them, but I was talking about this with somebody yesterday at Sewing Social and trying to understand why I'd have like multiple projects on the go at once. And I was explaining that sometimes I need to let something percolate, because if it hasn't quite turned out the way I hoped or envisioned or expected, a bit of percolation means I can sort of come back and kind of redeem it, or decide it's just going in a naughty corner and I'm not going to think about it. But I need that sort of space, and when I go away and I start finishing up another project or doing like a bit of an easy sew, I've got space in my brain then for my brain to go, oh, what about? So that is what happened with this. So we're going to go in reverse order. So the pink boucle, this is from Higgs and Higgs and is still available, and it's bulky to work with. Let's be very clear about working with boucle. Boucle is bulky. My machine was fine with it. I needed to either use a little hump jumper at the back, or there's a little springy button on my sewing machine foot. I've got a Janome and it could just help to get it under, or you go in on a less bulky bit and then sort of reverse back in. You need to think carefully about how much bulk and grading seams, so trimming things down, etc. But as long as I didn't go too fast, my sewing machine coped with it on auto tension. Obviously the difference in working with a lot of things is I did not do any pressing, which is tricky when you're working with like a shawl collar, that sort of thing. So I've avoided pressing. I used a lot of my clips, these, to sort of almost do like a version of finger pressing by clipping these on, sort of teaching the fabric where it needs to go. And the stitching mostly disappears in. It does leave a mark, but the colour mostly disappears in. So for example here, I did do pink thread, it's not identical, but it leaves, as I say, a mark, an indentation of the stitch line, but you don't really see the stitches. Most of the boucles I've worked with have sort of a felt back, and so it's fine on the back. When you're doing things like the corner where you've got all of this activity, I made decisions about overlocking edges so that there wasn't unfolding, because otherwise here, where this pocket is, there would have been multiple layers from folding the hem in and then multiple layers from the pocket. That would have not worked. So where I could, I did overlock edges. You could bind them, but again it would add layers of bulk. So I could have done a lined pocket, that might have helped as well. So there was options, and I did a lined pocket on the other one. So you've just got to think about how you're keeping the bulk down. It coped absolutely fine with the pleats. Now this is the Marilla Walker Jurassic coat. It is a free pattern. I've made a version before, so I was making this again, and there is a pleat at the front and back here. You can stitch it down, but I felt it looked better. It was fine there because you stitch it, you basted it first, and then it was only attaching to one other piece. So although that is 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, it could cope because there was no folding in it to an extent of when you're doing the line. So my machine coped quite well. When I did the shawl collar facing, that's on the inside. You could overlock that to reduce bulk. I haven't yet because I'm living with it a bit. I have decided not to stitch all the way up to get to stitch the shawl collar in place. I've trapped it when I'm stitching the pocket, so that holds the bottom end down. And then I've decided to stitch in the ditch to hold it in. It was really tricky there because of the amount of seams there, so I'm actually going to hand stitch the other stitch in the ditch. And then because there's multiple lines on the raglan style pattern, you can stitch in the ditch multiple places, and that can hold it down as well. I am very happy with how this coat turned out. I did the same with the sleeves. I did that and then stitch, because otherwise it becomes too bulky. Unless you're going to turn that out, it makes it sort of halo a bit, so like it's holding its own shape. So just there are things to think about when you're working with boucle. But overall, very happy with the pink jacket. There is a version that you can line of the Marilla Walker Jurassic coat, but I haven't done it yet. That's 2 without it. Let's talk then about this one. So the So Liberated Sylvan jacket, as I mentioned earlier, I made a toile, and the collar sits perfectly. Again, it is a bit like a shawl collar, but it's just up to here. Sits either up or folds down perfectly on the toile. But working with velvet and boucle, my machine was a bit like, what are you doing? there was a whole patch where I stitched it, and I just gave a little tug to one of the threads because I was thinking things are looking a bit weird on the back here, and it just went and pulled the whole thing off. So it hadn't properly caught between the bobbin and the top thread. It wasn't catching. So I did a lot of rethreading. I did a longer stitch, and actually by having the bouclé on the bottom and the jersey on the top, it coped better. So you could always do some test stitching with some scraps before you go onto the real one, but it was the only time I've ever really experienced when my machine hasn't caught things properly, and it was a bit like, what are you doing, woman? I did do the interfacing on the bottom side because this is like a mildly stretched jersey, and I thought otherwise the collar could sort of stretch out. Someone at the stage said it does have sort of smoking jacket vibes, which I like, but the undercollar, and I know it's definitely the undercollar because I checked really carefully, keeps wanting to turn out, so you're losing like the length of the upper collar. So even with some pressing with a ham, gotta have it, use your ham, it just doesn't want, I think it's because the bouclé is bulky, it doesn't want to come up and over to collar properly. To collar, new verb there. So when it lays down, it is lovely. It is super soft against my skin. So when the collar sits up, it's really soft, which is why I did it. But I've got options. So I have thought about top stitching on there. I did do the like under stitching before doing things here, but I've thought I could stitch along here to keep it out, but then I couldn't have it standing up. And it almost like the balance of the jacket, the collar feels too small, which is weird because on the toile, it definitely didn't feel like that at all. So I had thoughts. I did think about maybe making another collar underneath out of the velvet to sort of balance it out. But I'm really happy with the way I've got the velvet as the facing. It took time to make sure it laid carefully, but I'm really happy with that. And I have got pockets to go on where I've lined them with the velvet, so you get like a little velvety softness as you put your hand in your pocket. But what I have decided is I have some trousers in exactly the same velvet that I made and I don't love. I was very disappointed by them, and they were sat in the naughty pile. They are the Pattern Emporium Walk Bowley pants, which I love, but it's just not worked for me in the velvet. There's just been a few bits that just haven't quite gone, but there's ample here to make a scarf. So what I'm going to do is like some of these, it's a very coat scarf combo thing. It's a very popular thing at the moment, but I'm going to actually attach it at the back, like do a stitch so it's attached, and then the scarf can come over the collar. So I might attach it on the inside, come over the collar so that you've got like more of the velvet to balance out the velvet and the jacket, because it's not balanced at the moment. And because I was trying to think what's wrong with it, and it's just not, and it's not a good balance of the two fabrics. I really like the two fabrics together. I think if I did it again, and I will make another silver, and I think I'm going to look at how I can just slightly enlarge the collar a little bit. But I think I'll do that because it gives then sort of the balance of the velvet. I don't have to mess around with this collar because I do like when this collar stands up, but you've got more balance. I'm also going to do a cuff on the like an internal cuff on the sleeve so that when I turn it out, that's velvet as well, because I think the velvet there and here. And the other thing I want to say is that here again I've done all of the bottom of the jacket is hemmed, so that is overlocked, so that when I turn it over it's just one line. It stops the jacket sticking out. The other thing I did on the facing, because the Sylvan has like a lot of pieces, you've got the back facing and then the pieces down here, so I did velvet for these pieces, but I flipped the back bit round because really right side out would be bouclé out, but I wanted it to blend in with the interior of the jacket, so you can see I flipped it over so that it blends in perfectly, and I'm really happy I did that. So again, just thinking about which side of the bouclé you want where, and you could even play with that because it is felted. You could play with that with like a pocket. I think the cuff looks quite nice, but you need to think about how you finish these edges, but I don't think that without seeing a seam is necessarily a bad look, having the felt outwards. So, bouclé, bulky in your sewing room or your stash, bulky under your machine, but worth sewing with. It's forgiving in that you can't really see the stitches. It's perfect for things like sort of larger sort of jackets, work coats, overcoats, jumpers, gilets. Great suggestions from people, but it is a little bit of a workout when you sew with it. In future Vlogmas episodes, I will show you the finished burgundy one with this scarf on it, but as this is Vlogmas, can't get it all done in one episode. Most of it was filmed in one day, but you've got to go back sometimes. You just got to have a think and a percolate, and so I gave you this little bit at the end because I wanted to sort of bring you to a point of conclusion. I'll see you again in 2 days' time. I hope you are being able to have the end to 2025 that gives you a chance to put things the way you'd like them, try and gain a sense of what you need, and not be pressured by all of the stuff out there in the world telling you what you should buy or should own. Think about what's best for you. I will catch you again in 2 days.